Hi and welcome to another video. So in this video I wanted to go through the now supported custom firmware from Asus WRT-Merlin, and I just want to thank one of my people that actually commented on the last video, and that's Places and Spaces 35, as he called out and commented to make sure that we all knew that the Merlin firmware supports the AX11000. So just thanks to him. So I want to do this video to go through the differences, and if you're interested in actually changing your stock firmware that comes with the Asus router. And as you know, most of the Asus routers all have stock firmware, so when it comes to them upgrading and updating their firmware, it makes it much easier because it uses the same base code, and they can get security fixes and features updated on more routers much quicker, and also they can also support routers that are much older as well. So I think that's a really good thing Asus are doing, to be honest, to support the customers, and especially if you spend a lot of money on a router. They constantly put updates out, and as we've seen with the AX11000, that's what they've been doing since it's been released, and adding new features. So further on, as you can see on here, we've currently still got the stock firmware that's for the GT-AX11000. So this is the ROG. So this is their Republic of Gaming framework. So they have this here. So it's their GT-AX11000 dashboard, as we can see here, for the stock firmware. And as we see, all ROG firmwares have this kind of layout. Then you'll see some of the other Asus routers where they've got the standard. Normally it's a grey background, as you can see probably on the right hand side of the screen here. So they do keep it standard, so when you go to a next router, it's all the same, so you don't have to try and learn everything on the router every time. It's standardized across them all on all the different models they have. So just a bit of further information to go through about what Merlin is. So Merlin is a third party, so it does use the official Asus code base, so it is secure, and it basically is based on the stock firmware, but they add extra features. So yes, as I said before, Asus are really good, and their Asus WRT is public available on the Asus, even on their official website, so other software developers can create a different version of the original firmware. So this is hence the third party firmware that's called Asus WRT-Merlin, and as of the last few days they've only just released compatibility now with the AX11000. And as we can see here on the right hand side, we can see the stable and beta. So as you can see, they've got the different routers that they're actually supporting now, and on the list there is the AX11000. And as we said, that's just the new version they've got come out, and that's come out with the stable version 3.86.2. And as you can see, there's the other models there that they support, and then some of the older models they don't support anymore. So as we said, there is a stable version of the actual firmware, so you do have the security of using the Asus features like the AI protection from Trend Micro, so that's still there. So it has like the network map, quality of service, traffic analyzer, as we said before, AI protection, parental controls, guest network, VPN. The things are different probably on the new one. So as we know, the new feature of the stock firmware that's just come out has VPN fusion. So some of those things won't be in this Merlin version, but as we know that they've got other VPN on here, and that actually is probably even better than what's on the stock. So they have also the USB ports you can use, enhanced media server, a download master, and then you got also the normal Wi-Fi, LAN and WAN features as well. So what are the kind of differences is and the rules they try to keep with Merlin. So they don't want to, as they said here, they don't want to make it radical changes and extra features that will just bloat it out and not necessary. So it's really good they're keeping to the release of new version of Asus stock firmware, and they're keeping to those latest source codes as well. So it's got the latest updates, the fine tuning, the bug fixes and everything else. So basically they just look to improve on the Asus stock firmware and not replace. So I think the thing is here is that you'll see that it's recognizable, it has the same features, and therefore there's no need to recreate a brand new firmware for replacement, because this one's quite well established as well. And again, this one is stable. Of course, they do have beta versions of it where you can test, so they might have some bugs in that. But if you stick with the stable versions, I've heard in some of the forums that it's been quite rock solid, just as good as the stock firmware. And of course, it's got some improvements on there. And I think also we've got to remember is despite it's got a lot of advanced features in Merlin, they also try and target the beginner users as well as the advanced users. So the interface won't be foreign and won't scare away many of the beginners. So I think it's really good on their approach on what they do. And don't forget with Merlin as well, it's free as well. So they do work hard. And if you do, like I have, you got some spare money and you appreciate what they've done, you can always donate to them as well. So I think we've got to look at the difference. So looking at it, we've got the Merlin firmware version. I think they're targeting probably a bit more of an advanced user because there is some extra things on there. But as I said, you can, if you're a beginner or average, same as the stock firmware, you can still use this. Stability, I think the Merlin is trying to enhance stability over the stock version, and also performance and features. And you can customize it, and then you also, what's really good is you can do third-party add-ons as well by scripts that you can add into the actual firmware from other developers, and you can get those from a site called GitHub, and that shows you all the code and how to do it and everything, and you can see feedback. So I think overall it's really good news that we've got now another option of firmware that we can use. So I'm just going now to have a look to use, you can see here. So this is the main Asus Merlin website on the right hand screen, and you can, as I said, you can see there's the models, and this is the front page. You've got the about feature, so you can go in this, and you've got a documentation as well. You've got the changelog and a Wikipedia page, so tell you all the information, and you've got the download, of course. And so you can see here all the features that they're saying, but they've got a lot more. And the standard format, so what the difference is, you'll notice is that with the Merlin version, they're staying with the same Asus kind of style. So a lot of the gaming feature, well, the ROG features, I think they take away. So the dashboard and the actual layout will change from the black and red signature that they normally have on their firmware, and it will change to this grey color, the grey and blue. And also they won't have the new VPN fusion. I think they don't have that feature as well within there. But as we said, they have added other features to replace those ones, and in my opinion they're probably better than what's the actual here. As I said, they do enhance. So basically the first thing you would do is you can update your firmware, and it's really easy. It's just as before. It's as you normally do when you come to upgrade your firmware on your router. So now we'll move on to the next stage. So now moving on to downloading the firmware. So as you can see on the left hand side, I've opened up the option within the browser, and then gone to administration, and then firmware upgrade tab at the top here. As you can see here, I'm running currently the default firmware from Asus. So I've downloaded from Asus website, and it's their beta version. So as you can see here, I'm currently running their current firmware, that's 9.0.0.386_41994. So this is the beta version they've got that was fixing some of the DNS bugs that they had, or security flaw I think there was in there. So this has had no issues or anything like this with this software. Again, updating or upgrading your firmware, make sure that you probably do this through a stable connection, and also if you can, like me, I'm doing it through an Ethernet connection that's connected to the router. But if you can't, then you might be through Wi-Fi, but just make sure it's a secure connection when you're doing it. Also, if you're prone to power cuts and things like that, you don't want to cause any more problems. Like any time, even if you're updating the firmware on a standard firmware from Asus, you need to make sure that you do it securely and don't restart it halfway or anything, like let it upgrade completely before you start switching it off or try and restart it. So again, so if we just move over to the right hand side, you can see again the supported models that they have here, the different platforms. So as you can see, they've got some of the older routers, and then moving on to the HND platform, that's some of the newer routers that they support, and then no longer. So as we can see up here, we've got the features. So this gives you a quick rundown of some of the system features that it runs. As you can see, there's quite a lot here, and I think some of them are really good for like security. So you have DNS over TLS, that's a security, so no one can see when you're actually going to a website, so your ISP can't identify. It's sort of like Cloudflare, they have their version, and I think Google and OpenDNS as well. Also for quality of service, some models have them, and I believe our AX11000 supports it, is Cake, and that's really good. It's one of the best ones as well for QoS. And then of course then you can get some third-party add-ons like it says here. So as it says here under the system, you've got the various bug fixes, performance optimizations for the CPU, components, user scripts that you can run on, such as firewall. Cron jobs is basically scheduled tasks that you can set up, and again these are more advanced options where you can cause problems with your router if you don't know what you're doing. So if you just want the extra features that the Merlin software gives to you, you can just download it, upgrade your firmware, and that should give you more than enough features that you want. But if you do want to go advanced, I'll put the link in the website where you can go to these further websites and learn a bit more about it. And again, this is the one I was talking about before, where it does third-party add-ons, where you can go through the interface there and add on different things from other developers. That's really good. So as you can see here, you've got Tor support as well, and there's a lot of things that it does, that's improvements, enhancements. It's really good. Also, as you see here, they've got a page here about giving advice on when you're updating on a few notes, as usual with your firmware. Basically it's the same ones you would normally have with your Asus router, but as you can see, we've got a few things here where you need to note as well about clearing. If you haven't got enough RAM, they recommend that perhaps you restart it before you update the firmware. And if you're not coming from non-Asus firmware, you might have to do a factory reset, and a few things here. And as they're saying before, there's a thing here, so if you do manage to somehow brick your Asus router, as they said, it's quite hard to. If anything goes wrong, there's some recovery mode here, and it tells you the instructions on how to do it. But most of the time, if you do it correctly, and as I said, if you do it through a stable connection, you shouldn't have any issues. And you make sure you select the right firmware for your router. In this case, ours is the GT-AX11000 that we are relating to. So again, so if we just go back to this page here, and we can just go to download. As you can see here, they've got different signatures, so you can verify the different software. So if you go to the main download site, and then we just select here, you can then just go down and select your router. So ours is the GT-AX11000. You do have the version of beta, so that's a test version, or release. I would advise, if you're going to do anything and it's your first time, go with the release version. Most of the time it has the most features, and it's been tested for bugs as well. So we go to release, and as you can see here, it gives you a few notes about the firmware, and basically this is an enhanced version of the Asus standard WRT firmware. And again, there's their wiki page here you can see. So now you just click on the green button here, and we just click on the zip file, and then you just wait for it to download. So it will just count down. Just give it a few seconds, and you can see it come up, and then you can select. Then you can just click save and download it to your computer. And it's done. So now you've downloaded the zip file. So next we're going to upgrade the firmware on the router. And again, I'll put the link in here as well in the description with notes on here or for best practices and when you're updating your firmware. So now moving on to the actual, now we've downloaded the copy of the Asus WRT-Merlin file to your folder or your downloads folder, or wherever your desktop where it should be you've saved it. So again, just a few notes before the installation. It's on there is that sometimes you will have to reset your factory defaults. So that means you can't just, once you've flashed it, you can't just upgrade from the stock firmware if it is about 2 or 3 generations old and you've got 3 versions between it. It's probably best to factory reset your settings, and also in all cases you do not load a saved copy of your settings. So if you've backed up your settings from the stock firmware, and then put them onto a different one, onto the Merlin one, then you'll have a problem as well. So in all of these cases, do not load a saved copy of your settings. They do recommend that this would be the same thing as not resetting at all, as you'll simply re-enter any invalid settings you want to get rid of, and make sure to create a new backup of your settings after reconfiguring. So this is just going in between. So again, if you're going from stock firmware to stock firmware, then of course it will work, but between Merlin and different versions, it's always best to not to reset anything or restore any of your saved settings from a different version between a Merlin and the stock one. And it doesn't make that, I think, in the readme Merlin notes as well. So just moving on now. So as we said, we're in the firmware upgrade option menu in the router. So now I just go to my downloads folder, and within my downloads folder I've got the you'll have like 4 files. You'll have a SHA-256, that's to verify that the file hasn't been corrupted or changed in any way since you've downloaded it. You've got the readme, so that's got the installation and all the information you would want to know about Merlin and about their project. That's really good. So always advisable readme, and then also the change log where it's got all the changes from the previous version and other versions that they've had, so you can have a look to see how they've progressed over time and everything. So again, you're going to have your normal file that you would upload, so you'd select that and then you'd click open, and then you will see then now the router is actually upgrading. So you give it a little bit of time for it to update, as you normally do with any firmware. Again, you just, as I said, you've got to make sure that you're on a stable connection and your connections are going to cut out halfway between when you're updating, or any power loss or anything like that. So again, as is why it's updating the firmware now to Merlin. Just to give you a bit of background, so this was the originally forked from Tomato, so that's another version of firmware that's out there, like dd-wrt. So since it's grown very different product, so I think they've been removing some of the technical features that were part of Tomato firmware, but also adding a lot new original features as well. So it's a customized version for us, and I think it's really good. This version here, the developers have done really good. All the different features they've added, adding the support and all the information that they actually provide as well, the write-ups. So it gives you a good idea. So as we said before, it adds a lot of stable information to the latest copy as well. So you've got there in the system, the disk sharing, networking, and the web interface. And as we said, the web interface will go back to a standard normal Asus format. So it will look like. So when we go on to the next, we can see that. Some of the features will be removed, but then they've added other features to replace it. And as we said, I think they're an improvement over the stock firmware, so you won't be losing anything. And if you are an advanced user or you want to customize it, you can much more with this Merlin firmware. Again, only do it after you've read the documentation properly and you understand what's actually happening. And again, as this is open source, you can actually go to the GitHub page so you can see the source code. So if you're into coding and things like that, then you can see. So now, as we can see, it's actually restarted the router. So and it's updated. As we saw, it was quite quick as it's updated, and now it's asking to sign in with your details. So we'll go on and move on to that now. So as you can see now, I've completed the upgrade and changing to the Merlin firmware. So as you can see, as we mentioned before, this now reverts back to the standard Asus firmware, the design. So it's the grey and the blue. So it changes the layout. Again, you can quite familiar with all the options on the side under general and advanced. So you're at home with these. Of course, you've got a few more features now. Just an example as we here is we've got temperature, so we can see the temperature of our router and the CPU and everything, so that's really good. And there's a lot more features where you can go through and just have a look and review. And if you do want to decide after you've used this that it's not really for you, there is no problem. You can just, as it says here, go to the Asus download center, or you can just go to the Asus website, download the latest firmware from the Asus website, and then just go back and click on the upload, choose your manual version of the your firmware, of the stock firmware you've downloaded from the Asus website, and it will revert back to the version of the stock latest version of the Asus stock firmware. So you've got no issues there. And as you saw how easy it was, it brought over all my settings, and I was using the latest beta version as well of the firmware, so and I didn't have to do anything. Again, if you do have any missing images or anything like that, that's down to your browser. So you can do when you're in the browser window of Chrome and anything like that, you can hit on your keyboard Control F5. That refreshes your saved images for the Asus website address, and that should bring through all of your information. Again, if you do have any issues, you can revert back to the stock firmware if you don't like this. And also there is more options you can actually, once you go through them, you can have a look and everything else. But as you saw, it was very easy to update to Merlin, and if you want to go back, you can. So it's very easy to go back as well. So I hope you enjoyed this quick video on the different version of what Merlin brings to you. Again, we can go into more details of the options later on. If anyone wants to see the video of that, just let me know in the comments and we can go through that in more detail. But I hope you found this useful. And as I said, if you have any questions, as usual, we've got some really good people that follow the channel that are helpful and help each other out, and I'll help you as much as I can as well. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this useful. Have a great day.